I'm Christian Dorsey, and you're watching VoiceBox. One of the unique things about the world that we live in today is that we're overloaded with information. But how much of it is really focused on what is nearest and dearest to us, our local communities? To be able to give you the news that you can use and understand the true role that many people and organizations are having in making our community one that we're proud of. Good evening, Arlington. This is VoiceBox, and I'm your host, Christian Dorsey. Tonight's show, we're going to talk about being civically engaged and connected here in Arlington County. Even though we're a small place of only 26 square miles geographically, packed within those 26 square miles are 200,000 residents who come from all kinds of varying backgrounds and who bring all kinds of varied interests and skills to what is the Arlington community. And James, let's start with you. Describe for me sort of what makes Ballston, Virginia Square special.
First off, the parameters of the Ballston, Virginia Square Civic Association make it a very interesting place to represent. You have single-family homes, you have apartments, townhomes. You also have, all the way from Glebe Road to Kirkwood Road. You have a very wide area, and from Wilson Boulevard all the way up to 66. So it's a big area with varying interests. People who live in single-family areas have very different concerns than somebody who lives along the RP corridor. Somebody who, walks to work or the metro every day has a very different concern than somebody who lives and drives to work every day. They may be more concerned about having parking issues when somebody who walks might be more concerned about lighting and safe streets. So I think it is very, a very interesting place to represent. Also, the age range is very interesting. You have people like myself in his 20s, and then you have people who are octogenarians who have lived in the area for several decades. So you have very different perspectives. You also have people from across the country, if not across the world. So it's a very exciting place to represent, but it obviously presents some challenges.
And thank you for giving us that background, because when people hear Ballston, Virginia Square, probably the first few things that come to mind are businesses,
sure,
high-rise, metro, in no particular order. So giving us a sense that there is this incredible diverse flavor, very useful. A little bit different in terms of what the neighborhood consists of is the NOC community, but certainly diverse in and of itself. Tell us a little bit about it, Dr. Taylor.
First of all, NOC was Arlington's oldest African-American community. It goes back to 1844 when two freed slaves, Levi and Sarah Jones, were bequeathed land by George Washington. And from there, the NOC community has grown over the years. NOC is now a very diverse community, fast-changing community. It's no longer can be called a predominantly African-American community. It covers a wide area. NOC is a pretty wide area going from 16th Road on the north to 4 Mile Run on the south, Walter Reed Drive on the west to the Army-Navy Country Club on the east. It is made up of more apartments are now coming into it, condos are coming into the community now. NOC is fast changing. It is, as I said earlier, it's no longer a predominantly African-American community. NOC has an established business district. Most people don't know that 4 Mile Run, east of Walter Reed Drive, all of those businesses there are also within NOC's jurisdiction. And all of where the Washington Golf and all of the former Washington Gas Company and the warehouse district. So included in NOC is actually Arlington's last industrial area is also located there. So a lot of exciting things are happening within the NOC community now as it's fast changing.
And we're going to certainly talk about those things, and already you're getting a sense that, you know, we've just looked at 2 of the 57 civic associations in Arlington, and you can see the richness that they each have and all the myriad you know, issues and all the myriad concerns that maybe stakeholders would have who live there. Sort of having a countywide perspective is a unique challenge. And Cecilia, tell us a little bit about the Committee of 100 and kind of what it brings to the table when it comes to civic engagement in Arlington.
Well, the Committee of 100 has been established for over 50 years, and it is made up of not 100 members. That's a misnomer of our name. We are members consisting of households from all over the county, and our job is to meet monthly to talk about issues that affect the county, bring dialogue together, and through that dialogue, our hope is then to have our members go back into the community and share that information with other members within their community. And to that extent, it's very similar to what the Civic Federation is about, in that the Civic Federation is also driven by that membership coming together to talk about those local issues that are in the specific community and then taking it back to the larger community. So we have some similarities with the Committee of 100 and Civic Federation as a whole. We meet once a month at Marymount University. Our schedule's from September through June, and we have a different topic. We usually try to have 3 speakers come, often pro and a con on an issue. This month in March coming up, we will be having a discussion on dropout rate, for example. So this is a hot topic in the sense that it's an issue concerning the community. We bring people together to talk about that issue and to find some solutions, hopefully, that we can take back.
Well, you know, one of the issues that dominates, I know, discussions in all 3 of your organizations, as well as the county at large and municipalities all across the country, development. The notion of how you change a community to bring economic growth and opportunity to rehabilitate older housing or business stock, while at the same time taking care of the special needs and the special concerns that existing residents and stakeholders have. So let's just get right into it. Let's start with Nauk, Dr. Taylor. This is a community that for many years didn't see a lot of development activity, but anyone who's driven through Nauk recently can see a lot of construction activity and maybe a lot of things that don't look the same as they did 10 years ago. What's been going on?
Well, one of the things that in working with the development, Nauk had such a rich history. We put an emphasis on not losing our history, realizing that we didn't have the economic wherewithal in order to do the development. We worked closely with the developers that they would develop their projects while yet keeping some resemblance of the history into it. We worked with them in order for them to give some type of recognition to former landowners and things who, for instance, the Stanley Martin project is at the old Dunbar Homes development. Dunbar Homes, you know, goes back to 1946 when the 88 veterans purchased the property and formed the co-op. Well, in order to recognize Nauk and not being squeezed out by Shirlington, we had them name the project Shirlington Crest at Nauk. And as part of the project, they put a little memorial park in with a bronze plate with pictures and the names of the 88 original families. The Shelton Apartments were named, AHC's project was named Fairview Manor. We had them change it back to the Shelton, which was named after the former owner who owned all the property at the Shelton. We have another development called Bowman Hills. That was named after one of the families. So we're trying to maintain the historical aspects of the community while at the same time recognizing that development is here and the community will change. In order for that, we have subdivided the Nauk community off into 8 individual, what we call community action groups, because the area has such diverse interests depending on where you live.
So further dividing.
We have subdivided the Nauk Civic Association into 8 community action groups, all reporting to the civic group, knowing that each area may have some different needs that overall you wouldn't address. Like one area may be parking, they be dealing with a parking problem, where another one it may be dealing with code enforcement.
Okay.
So these subgroups can deal with that.
Well, you know, parking, got to go over to talk about Boston, Virginia Square, because that's always been an issue over there. But, you know, I remember some years ago there was talk that, you know, there's nothing going to be happening in Boston and Virginia Square moving forward because everything that can be developed is pretty much developed.
Right.
Well, joke's on you, whoever thought that. Incredible amount of activity still taking place in that area. How does that impact the community, James?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a consistent kind of conversation with developers, county staff, other stakeholders. We're actually working through this very issue right now. We're in a site plan review commission conversation. There's a developer that's trying to put up 2 apartment buildings. And it is the conversation about how do things change from existing uses, but how do you still maintain the kind of community dynamic that you already have? And so we were at a site plan review back in February, meeting you know, lasted 3 hours, and an opportunity to kind of have everybody's voices heard. And you know, I think it's also kind of managing those expectations. We're one part of this conversation. We do have a seat at the table, and we're doing, you know, our overview of the process. But we have to also realize that, you know, we can have our critique of it and try to make the project better. But the good thing about Arlington, I don't know how many of your viewers know this, but there is planned growth. And it's good that it is that way. The county has gone to great lengths to plan the growth that we're going to see. There are designations for land use and zoning categories, and so it is very planned in that way. So it is good to see that even in this site plan, they're working within the sector plan that was written for Virginia Square. There are certain things that are kind of around the edges that we might want to see change, but you know, on the whole, you know, it's not something where somebody's trying to put down a 20-story apartment building in my backyard, right? So I think it's a good opportunity for people to participate in the process, and there are several, you know, many opportunities to do that. And then site plan is a great way for our committee and so our association and our members to really participate.
And this whole notion of planned growth, you know, it goes back decades in Arlington, and you know, many people credit it with the incredible amount of density that we have around metro stations and the positives and negatives that brings. And the Committee of 100 has been an integral role in Arlington's growth as really a planned growth community. But nonetheless, Cecilia, I've been to a few Committee of 100 meetings, and it's always a source of tension when you talk about these development pressures and the character of Arlington's neighborhoods. How does the committee deal with this? Is it a regular part of topics that you discuss? I
think it is a regular part of topics, and transportation could be a topic every month, I think, in Arlington, and those are one of the key issues. But from a countywide perspective, maybe I'll shift gears a little bit on you, Christian, because we're talking Civic Federation, and one of the hats I also wear is as the Schools Committee chairperson for the Civic Federation, which also has a countywide perspective. So I'll switch a little bit on that and
go back and forth. Just let us know when you're changing hats.
I'm changing hats, so I'm telling you that. In part because I think this notion of civic engagement and getting people to the table and having a seat at the table is really critical, and it's part of what goes on, I think, with the Civic Federation and what can be very useful. And what needs to happen, though, to make those things alive is like what Dr. Taylor just talked about, which is getting members to your table, whether it's at the Committee of 100 or in the Civic Federation, who are interested in talking about a topic. So in the Schools Committee, for example, we're tasked every year with evaluating the superintendent's budget and the county manager's budget. And this year it's going to be an interesting discussion because there's some big deviations in terms of how that all fits with the established revenue sharing agreement that also exists for the county. And what the Civic Federation does is it allows you to get the information that is necessary to then evaluate those issues so that you can have meaningful participation in the process that exists in Arlington County. And so I think that's where it's important to have these countywide discussions as well, to be part of organizations that give you input from people who are committed to the community already. And so I appreciate that. Well,
you know, the perspectives and the hats that you all are wearing really make up part of the collective known as the Arlington Way. And it's something that's hard to define for those of you who haven't been a part of the county for a long time, but it's not without its fair share of critics. And one of the things that people talk about are, you know, despite the fact that we've got all of these avenues for people to get involved, if you go to meetings where decisions are made, it seems that you'll notice the same faces recurring over and over again, and people question how deep is the connection to, you know, all of Arlington's 200,000 residents. So I just pose that question to all of you. Do you think we're doing a good job in Arlington in making sure we're getting the input from as many residents, as many stakeholders as we can? And whoever's ready can jump right in.
We were talking about an overall development plan for Arlington. There really is not an overall development plan. The neighborhoods actually are setting the development plan. I know in the North community we had to do a North revitalization plan, and it was how the residents of the community wanted it to look. The county may have height restrictions and things of that nature, but the citizenry or the residents of that community developed the plan to how they wanted their community to look in the future. So I think in a way that a lot of the members are being involved in it through its different forms of how they want their community to look, and it's not a bureaucracy sitting up and say, this is how we want you to look.
I think this is, I'll put on my Committee of 100 hat, and this is one of the things I think the Committee of 100 really tries to address. Recognizing Arlington's commitment to the Arlington Way, I think it's only as effective as the information that the membership has to be able to decide things. And I think this was the role of the Committee of 100 historically, to sit down as a Committee of 100 and say, what are those issues that people need to be educated on so that they can meaningfully participate in their civic federations or in their local issues. And so we try to look in the crystal ball, if you will, and see what the hot topics are. I think an excellent example of that was last year when the change in the county government form of government was discussed in the community. The Committee of 100 actually had a forum on that months before it was ever a topic of the community's discussion. And we were able to bring the stakeholders together to have an informed discussion on the pros and the cons, and then an objective third party from the state, what the actual impact of that change of county government would be on the community. So I think that's an instance where we try to provide the education up front so that when the actual discussions were happening to make the Arlington Way and the information come forward, people were already primed and had some awareness of what was going on.
I mean, I think the Arlington Way is, for our civic association, as long as I've been involved, it's been a good process. I mean, one example is currently our civic association is a stakeholder in the Beaver Pond or Ballston Pond stakeholder group, and they're looking at ways to improve Ballston Pond, which actually is in the Bluemont Civic Association, but as we are a neighboring civic association, have been included in that process. And as Dr. Taylor and I were talking about this earlier, generally speaking, neighboring civic associations are afforded that, and citizens can come and help and talk these issues through. So I think that's one example, but it happens countywide. And so while you may see the same faces, they're the ones who are civically active. You do see a lot of people, same folks around. But there are many opportunities for people to participate, and I think in the whole it's a good process. And as I said before, you know, you have to manage your expectations. You know, the county has their policies, and sometimes you're only arguing about things at the edge or the margins. But you know, all the county board members will attest to this, that they want to see the citizenry involved in the process, and they think that it's a better process for having gone through that discussion, you know, about what we can do and how we can make Arlington a better place. So,
well, you all are invited to join the conversation. Send us a question that we'll discuss on the panel. You can send that to voicebox@arlingtonmedia.org. Folks in our studio audience, if you have a question, just do something to get my attention and I'll be sure to recognize you. Before we do that though, I want to follow up on your point, James. And You know, the Arlington Way, as it is, providing the vehicles through the civic associations, the Civic Federation, and having organic groups like the Committee of 100 spring up, provides sort of the vehicle for people to get involved. But might Arlington Way 2.0 involve some proactive outreach to look at those pockets that are not currently connected, as we've kind of discussed before the show, to maybe get them and their perspectives to the table? Do you think there's some concrete things that we as a community need to do?
I do think that there are a lot of people within my civic association that are new residents to Arlington and don't necessarily know all the things that are going on. They don't necessarily know, they're not down the weeds on GLUP designations, general land use plan, or zoning ordinances, and all this other stuff. But that has real impact in their life. If the neighboring building gets redesignated and then something else happens next door, that can have a real impact on their life. I don't expect that everybody in my civic association is going to, join me and be as informed all the time. But I think the county can do a better job, and we can do a better job of informing our citizenry, of our people in our area, about just the kind of basic stuff that, this is how you can get a tree trimmed on this county street, or this is, these are the people you can talk to, and or come to talk to us about it. We'll help you out. And I don't think a lot of people know that there are civic associations like in Blvd Square and NOC that can help them through these processes. So I think it is a kind of an educational thing to try to, and it's on us to do it. Yeah. But I think that would help in kind of bridging that gap.
I think that one of the things that the county is doing a little better job on is that they do have more interactive forums online, so that there is some capacity to do some of that with the county. I think civic federations tend to be volunteer driven and resource poor sometimes. And so I think keeping up with making sure that the listserv notices are updated, or ensuring that the information that's put out by the civic federations is really timely, is something that people struggle with. And this is where it really is important to bring the younger generation on board into the civic organizations that we're involved with, to ensure that we can keep up with the 2.0 social technology that you're talking about. Because I think we have to be real in the world we're in today, and in order to do that, we have to be talking to the young people who are part of this community in the language that they know, which is immediately push out the information. I think there are lots of tools that are starting to emerge in our community, and we have to be aware of them and figure out how we can use them as civic organizations. And I know we've been struggling with the Committee of 100 to find a really good volunteer who could help us, be more relevant. But we're trying to post and podcast and do some things with shorter pieces, maybe not quite to tweets, but to do more technology, so that information that we are doing in our community isn't just replayed on Arlington Independent Media channel, but also gets out to the community in more shorter information.
So I heard a call for volunteers. If anyone who was interested in helping the Committee of 100 reach into the modern sphere in terms of its communications, we'll tell you how to reach Cecilia by the end of the show. What about you, Dr. Taylor? What are your thoughts on reaching out to new constituencies who may not currently be involved?
Well, I was at a meeting today, and one of the topics today was how do you reach the more mature audience, especially like from newsletters and things. The younger half is more techies and don't mind reading online, where the more mature or seasoned residents still want the piece of paper before them. And it has advantages and it has disadvantages in the medium that you put it out. We now, in this information explosion, we get so much material that you just, you don't read it all, you look at it. Where even with a newsletter, you can lay it down and you can go back to it, or you're just sitting back. So that's one of the things we are all wrestling with now. How do you keep everyone informed, into the loop, without having to actually come to face on it? I think everyone is wrestling with that in today's time.
Indeed. Go ahead, James.
If I can comment on that, I mean, our civic association recently has made a new website, which we thought for our area was a big issue. We're also trying to use social media. And again, this is not at the behest of doing the things we used to do, but it's another tool for us to reach out into the community. We represent a very young community, and so, but we also do have older members, so it is trying to navigate that, because a lot of the people who participate aren't the 20-somethings, but it is trying to acknowledge that, you know, if we don't kind of advance at some level, then, you know, we're kind of leaving some of this stuff behind. We could really use that those tools to reach out. So, you know, and then it has bared fruit. I think, you know, using those emails and tweets and Facebook and other stuff has really helped us to reach out to people who we previously didn't touch. And at least lets them know we're here. I don't think it necessarily supplements the meeting. I don't think it supplements the actual conversations that you may have at something like, you know, Committee of 100, but it definitely touches those people and lets them know that you're there as a resource, and that they can come to you if they have questions.
Indeed. We're going to go to a question from our studio audience.
I was once in the Boston, Virginia Square Civic Association, and I'm not there anymore because they changed the land use plan for my house and basically put a high-rise where I used to live. And that's why I'm not in Buckingham. I was your Neighborhood Conservation Advisory Commissioner at the time. The question I have, though, and which has frustrated me constantly, the Arlington Way, which we all talk about, doesn't really seem to be the way we think it is. When it comes to the process and decision-making, the county staff basically runs it. They have plenty of meetings, plenty of public input, but the county staff basically has their ideas and usually makes only minor modifications. Then it goes to the county board with the county manager report based on what the county board says, and the county board generally, about 95% of the time, particularly in the bigger issues, goes with what the county staff says, no matter how many people come down to the meeting, and no matter what the Civic Association says, and no matter what's in the neighborhood conservation plan. Have you encountered that, and what do you do about it? This is the way the Arlington way really seems to be, according to the way I've seen.
Well, thanks, Bernie. I mean, this is a great question. I mean, we've got, we're talking about the citizens and their role, but of course we have elected officials, and we also have a county government which is made up of paid professional staff whom we fund. How does it work when those entities may be in conflict? What have been your experiences when you have maybe the will of the people going up against different opinions at the other levels of public governance?
I agree, but yet I disagree with his line of thinking. I find that most of the public wants to enter the process to react to the process rather than being on the proactive end, where it starts within the communities and things of that nature before it goes to it. I know we have had great success in getting what we want in North through having the people involved, like the North Revitalization Plan. Although the county has great input, it really, in the end, the residents, if they really persist in what they want, we have been very successful in passing our revitalization plans and things of that nature. So if you get involved very early in the process, it's hard to change the process after years and a lot of money have been spent into it. Yes, then it's going to be hard. But if you're in from the early stages, I think you can influence the process.
Okay, so you see timing as a critical factor. Cecilia?
I would agree timing is a critical factor, and my first introduction with the Arlington Way actually dealt with the Arlington school side and the Arlington Way with regard to that. And in somewhat, my experience could have been very much the same as what you're describing. But I think what makes a difference is recognizing that the professional staff is there and are making a recommendation because there's usually some reason behind it. And for me, the effectiveness of the Arlington Way is getting to really having accountability for why the staff is making the recommendation that they're making, and having the community come to an understanding, and then educating the staff if there are things that the staff has failed to take into account that were relevant to the community, then the Arlington Way can be effective. But if you're not talking to each other and you just perceive the problem is the decision's been made and you can't change it, then the Arlington Way doesn't work. But if you recognize, even if the decision's been made, and you can feel that this doesn't feel like a good process because it seems like, oh, whatever we say, they've already made their choice and it's going to go forward. If you hold them to accountability, which is what the Arlington Way allows you to do, you get a dialogue that you wouldn't have had, which informs the community about what the issues are, why you're able to make a change around the edge, but not fundamentally. Or maybe you get the county to actually fundamentally make a change and say, you know, we didn't think about the impact of that on the community. So in my own circumstance, I think the school that my son was going to was deemed by the public school administration to be the site for the future immersion school for Arlington County. I will tell you, at the end of that process, that was not the school that was the immersion school for Arlington County. And part of that came as a result of the community coming together and really looking at what was in the best interest of the existing communities, both for the two schools that eventually became the immersion community and for the school that had been cited for to be the place, and made a case to the county staff as to why we needed to have something different. So for me, the Arlington Way really worked. But my initial reaction coming in from an outsider, as an outsider, I was just new to the county and hearing about this Arlington Way process, was that this is a farce. It doesn't mean anything, decisions have been made. But I hung in there, and that was what really vested me in this community, I think, because the success of that process and really having the commitment from the county staff to listen to the issues and to hear the concerns and to come to a conclusion that really served the better interest of the community made me believe that the Arlington Way isn't totally a myth, that it does exist.
So timing and then your experience, you have seen where maybe the decision was made in advance, but you still took the time to challenge what assumptions and what thought went into it, and perhaps in some way that helped alter or improve the decision. Okay. Anything from you, James? I mean,
yes. I think one of the things that that's part of the Arlington Way is there are numerous advisory and citizen commissions where people can participate and work with staff and sometimes challenge staff to come up with the best solution possible. They write recommendations to the county board and can help influence decisions that are made. Within our own civic association, there was discussion with another one and with county staff, zoning commission, about changing designations, which would allow for different development to take place. And when zoning commissioners found out about exactly what was going to be proposed, they pushed back in a big way to staff and said, I don't think you understand the unintended consequences of what this will do. And so there are times when it cuts both ways. And Bernie, there's some truth into what Bernie said. But I think on balance, committees and commissions and other participatory organizations do allow for community involvement that can be a little bit of a two-way street. Because county staff doesn't want to be put in a situation where they're pushing so hard at the direction of the board where the citizens kind of revolt and then it's just kind of this bad situation. So I would say that, you know, that there are kind of release valves and ways for participants in the community to voice their opinions and to influence decisions that are made.
Thank you all. We have another question from our audience. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm Sonia McCormick. I'm the president of the Williamsburg Civic Association, and I was thrilled to be invited tonight because our Civic Association is going through what we hope will be the Arlington Way, and we're fighting these lights at Bishop O'Connell High School, and our Civic Association voted adamantly against the lights, as did the Arlington East Falls Church Civic Association. And my experience so far has been that the county has followed the Arlington Way. We think that the county staff has listened to the concerns of the neighbors, and the vote has continued to be deferred until they have all the information they need. So we're just hoping that this does in fact follow the process, and that they'll make the right decision and vote against the lights. Bishop O'Connell, bad parking, real estate values are going to go down, and it's going to be an NCAA facility in partnership with Marymount University that does not belong in a residential neighborhood that's zoned residential like ours. So.
Well, you know, Sonia, you bring up a really just important point when you're talking about Arlington. You know, for the nuts and bolts of it, Arlington, we got 26 square miles and we're not adding any more unless, you know, there's something going on with Alexandria that I don't know about. And within that, we're a community that has to continue to grow. It continues to be a community of choice for many people, which means greater density, which means greater revitalization even of neighborhoods that are perfectly content with the way they are. So the sort of question is, just from an individual perspective, how do you all sort of look at the near-term future for Arlington when it comes to the tremendous pressures for growth versus the very real concerns that people may have, you know, maybe that's fine, but not in my backyard?
Well, I look at Boston, Virginia Square for, you know, for density. I mean, I'll kind of go back to what I said before. I mean, I think that there are concerns at, you know, kind of a block by block area, you know, basis. You know, there's a development that's kind of being proposed right now, and you know, would add density to the area, and there are other places along that corridor that can be developed. So, you know, there are concerns about, you know, are they going to add more buses? Are they going to add, you know, more trains to Metro? I mean, if all those people are intended to go to the Metro station, which that's what they're saying, how does that play out? So I think there are real concerns about things like that. And right across our border is the new Founders Square project, which is going to add a lot of density, a hotel and DARPA and all this other stuff. So, you know, I think there are concerns that the neighborhood has, and then looking forward in terms of, well, what else can come down the pipeline. I think the flip side of that coin, though, is the fact that in looking out Wilson Boulevard, there is not a lot more developable space along that, you know, that corridor, and because of land use and other designations, zoning, they can't necessarily just go into the residential area and just make a, you know, a couple townhomes into a high rise. They can't do that. So with a lot of, unless they do a lot of arm twisting, right? And the county board, I hope, won't let them do that. So I think there's good things that in the bad, right? But I think on the whole, yeah, we will be facing some challenges in the next several years.
And I think, again, this is where the Committee of 100 tries to be on the cutting edge of issues, and I'm just racking my brain because I can't remember whether it's April or May, so check our website. Okay. We will be doing a program on the East Falls Church development and the proposal there, which the county originally said, oh, too early, we can't get there, we're not really ready to discuss it. But the Arlington Committee of 100 believes that it's never too early to get those issues on the table, because again, if we get the things out there and get it educated, then people are in a better position to have those discussions and make sure that that input is given at the front end, because we can hear where people are thinking they're going. And hearing the new county manager, when she took the position, talking about the fact that they've got good plans going on underway at East Falls Church, we know that it's not too early to get involved, and so we want to be having a discussion, invite people to come to our meeting and hear the proposals and hear what the issues are that exist with regard to that development at East Falls Church. We see the same thing happening in other locations. I actually live in the Douglas Park neighborhood and have been very involved in the Columbia Pike development issues, and that's another place where we're going to have growth over the next several years. So from an individual perspective, it's been an issue that I've been concerned about in terms of displacement of the communities and the diversity that exists along the Pike as we engage in that development. So one of the give and takes always when you do development is, how do you maintain the integrity of the community? When I moved into Douglas Park, we were known as the zip code in a post. Let's see, the world in a zip code, okay, I think was the moniker that I was told about, because there was so much diversity in the 22204 zip code that it basically represented all of the whole world in terms of the level of diversity that was there. That has changed a lot, and that's a big sacrifice, I think. But I think that with that trade-off, hopefully will come additional economic development, and hopefully continued space to allow that diversity and the small business entrepreneurs to continue to exist, because it's really what makes Arlington unique as well, is that we're not just mega stores and chain stores, but that we have the diversity reflected here in our community.
And developing our NOC revitalization plan, we started off dealing with land use and changing the GLOPs and the zoning that controlled the density for the area, the height limitations that you could go through. One of the big problems, or soon face problems, as I said earlier, the only industrial space left in Arlington is now in North. Well, with the need for more housing and the need to go up, that's a prime area to be redeveloped. But yet Arlington does not want to lose what industrial industry that it already has. So that's going to be one of the things that will be coming up, how we deal with the area east of Shirlington Road in what you would call an industrial park now. And it's not only industrial, but it has heavy-duty industrial like the Virginia Concrete
Factory, yeah.
things like it. Plus across the street now you're building the Stanley Martin development with the high-end townhomes. We'll have to look at this type of industry or industrial area. So I see that coming up too. But one of the ways is to get involved early in the land use plan. And you can control the density and things by working through the land use rather than the other way around where the developers do a lot of trade-off and things of that nature.
Well, you know, we got an email question about how the Arlington Way compares with other Northern Virginia jurisdictions. And, you know, I don't know if you all regularly talk with colleagues outside of the county, but clearly one of the ways in which we are different here in Arlington is the way in which we elect our municipal public servants. And that was the source of the big brouhaha that you alluded to last year, Cecilia. But, you know, we don't have in this county districts that our elected officials represent that take the county into, you know, narrower slices and serve to represent, you know, portions of the community. They're all at large and represent the community at large. And I want to get your sense as to whether or not you think that that's good, or you know, does the county board need to really reflect what we've done with our civic associations and in effect sort of divide the county into more manageable areas? Not to put you all on the spot, but I'm going to. It's the host's prerogative.
Right. I don't know what the size of Arlington. And then you have to measure the good points against, once you start to get into area representation, I think you ante up or you ratchet up the political process. And you stop looking at the good of the whole and start looking at that narrow area that you represent. So the jury is out on whether we move to with me.
It's okay to be undecided. I'll accept that answer, absolutely.
I mean, I think that the current form that we have now, where we have members are all at large, allows the board to take a long view at things. The other thing, which was part of this proposal last year, I believe all the members would have been kind of up every couple of years, so you wouldn't really, no, they'd all be up at the same time, correct?
Under the proposal. Yeah.
Under that proposal.
Right.
So you would lack, potentially, somebody who has been there for a long time. And so I think the benefit of Arlington has been the ability to plan out 5 years, 10 years, 15, or even longer. And you're looking at something that's going on right now in Crystal City. They're taking a very long look at how they want to change Crystal City, but they have the benefit of being able to do that with professional staff at the county level, but also people on the board who have the ability to take a larger look, and they're not just looking at one specific area, whether it's Knock or Ballston, Virginia Square, or any other part of Arlington.
And I guess my take on it would be sort of going to the last point, which is that the biggest problem I see with our representatives isn't that we go at large versus districts. And I think the trade-off from what we learned in the county proposal was there's not a good form of government in the Virginia state plan that would allow us to keep the benefits that we have as the county in the way we're structured. But I've always had a problem with the fact that we elect one representative a year and two representatives in the year that the presidential race runs, because that's a more protected elected time. Because then you can't hold the county board accountable if you do have disagreements with what their results are, because they tend to put the person who's up that year in a position of either being the chair so that they're more protected in terms of the kinds of things they do, or you know, defer them. Almost it feels like sometimes that they set up the vote so that that person can vote against it and get the public support for them because they're running for office. I think our public elected representatives are great, but I think we do need to look sometime at how that current structure where they're elected and the cycle that they're elected with the political party, even though theoretically under our system as well, they were supposed to be independent at one time, but it's clearly moved into a political structure, works with the larger long-term interest to get to the point that James is talking about. And so sometimes, you know, longevity can have a problem too, which was why we've seen term limits come in and sweep through the country, is because at a certain point you also have to have change to ensure that you're getting different perspectives on the table. Even though right now I think that all of our elected officials are excellent, they are committed, I think, to the Arlington way of long-term vision for the community, but there is a sense from some people in the community that the voices aren't heard, which is why, again, I think a forum like the Committee of 100 is great, because it was designed on the fact of being representative of a large group, and we continue, even though we're not limited to 100 members anymore, to try and ensure that our membership is reflective of a diversity in the community, so that this is a place where our elected officials come and they get to hear the diverse views as well, and so that we can hold people accountable.
Well, let me ask you, since you all are generally sort of on the same page with this, I'm going to play a contrarian role. And, you know, we're looking at Ballston, Virginia Square, an area which is essentially from its initial modern planning. It dates back to the mid-'70s with the arrival of Metro. It's gone through several refinements and iterations over the years. And really the first look at your community from a global planning perspective wasn't until 2004. Is that a good process, that you've got 3 decades between when areas of the county are kind of given the sharp detail attention to plan for their growth?
I think there were other factors that prohibited my area from getting the attention. And my area, and we all know what the factors were. There was not much attention paid to the African American communities on a whole in the county for a long period of time. And it's just become in recent years that we have been included in the process of how we want our communities and things to look. Prior to that, it was almost, you do what you want to do, I'll give you a few dollars and you just go and go. But now I think that we are an integral part of the Arlington way. In fact, we have, despite staff's recommendation, we have overcome a lot of the staff's recommendations in order to get things that the citizens really believed in and stood firm. And I think that that's all over Arlington. If the citizenry of that community really feels strongly about it and really out there, they can overcome the staff's recommendations in some aspects or some time.
Thank you. Before we end, and our time is running short, I want to make sure we get a question from our studio audience.
Sure. My name is Connor Marshall. I'm from the Ballston, Virginia Square Civic Association. Just wanted to ask a general question about when you compare Arlington as a locality to the rest of the Commonwealth, we're very unique and very, very different. What do you all see as the role of what goes on in Richmond at the state level, and how that affects what goes on at the county, and then by consequence what goes on in our neighborhoods?
Well, Connor, thank you for that question. We can have all the Arlington ways that we want, but as we've alluded to on previous shows, there's a lot our county is prohibited from doing if it's not first enabled by the legislators down in Richmond. So it's a unique relationship that our county has within the Commonwealth. Anybody want to talk about that? How Richmond plays a role in what we may or may not want to do? And it's a tough question, so take a minute.
A negative or positive role?
Either way, you can talk about whatever pops to mind.
Well, I think in some ways Richmond hinders a lot of Northern Virginia's progress. Northern Virginia being more progressive, Richmond being more conservative to ultra-conservative, without any looking at the needs of a particular section. They look at the state as a whole, which is their role as state legislators. But I think it hinders Northern Virginia in a great way. A lot of the policies that are passed in Richmond prohibit us, especially like our big thing, the transportation.
Again, I think this is where we learned about the change of county government form from last year a lot, and I don't think a lot of people knew before that how unique Arlington was. And in terms of that, in relationship to our neighboring jurisdictions, unlike Fairfax County and Loudoun County that have a lot of the same needs that we do and didn't plan quite as well as we did, although they have a lot more land and can do some things better than we can, just because they can replicate things in a way that we can't, for our unique style. Our ability to really address an issue at Richmond with our legislators that's only addressed at Arlington and get that passed is one of the unique and really beneficial things that we have. And the stories are told that they can Fairfax can ask for the same exact thing that Arlington would, for example. Several commissions or several of our housing initiatives have been able to be possible because of our unique form of county government in Richmond. And if we were in any other kind of county form of government, form of government, we wouldn't have that benefit. So Richmond, I think, would play even more of a role in Arlington's life because of the Dillon rule, which precludes us from doing anything that Richmond says we can't do. So I think we're fortunate in the sense that there was some forward-thinking person who put us in the county form of government that we're in, and that helps us a lot in relationship to other communities.
Anything?
I mean, I would just kind of like to piggyback on what Cecilia said, that, you know, we have benefited, I think, by having that unique form of government, and we have been able to be very successful with our legislators down in Richmond in moving you know, our community forward in a lot of respects, and because we've been able to do that, that allows us to focus on other things here locally. So I won't take any more time saying that, but I think it has been a positive thing for both Arlington, but also kind of our individual communities.
And Connor, it's really a great question because, you know, we've talked about the civic associations and their relation to county advisory commissions, which relate to the professional staff, which relate to the county government, and yet on top of that, we've got our Commonwealth government. This is a multi-layered you know, entity, the whole civic engagement thing. And probably people watching tonight are going, no way am I going to get involved with all of that. Yet all three of you have and are successfully sort of navigating and finding your ways as Arlington citizens and being connected to the wider community and helping your fellow residents stay involved. So give some advice to people watching at home who are thoroughly freaked out right now about all they'd have to learn and do. Give them encouragement and hope that it's ultimately all worth it. And Dr. Taylor, I'm going to start with you because you do have the honors of being someone who has served longer as the head of your civic entity than anyone else. And please make your responses quick. We've just got a couple minutes left. Well,
the whole thing is trying to sell that there is an advantage, that if you're not involved in the process, then don't complain.
All right. That was succinct. Thank you. Cecilia.
I think the other thing that we have is very educated citizenry who are very involved in across the river in the federal government. And one of the things that's exciting when I talk to people to say is, you know how the federal government works, but it's so much better to do things at the local level where it can actually make a difference.
Okay.
And I would just add that, you know, while there seems to be a lot to learn, we all started at that point too, where we knew nothing. And so I wouldn't be deterred from civic engagement because, as we've all talked about tonight, there's a lot to be gained by being an active participant.
Wonderful. Great comments from our panelists, wonderful questions and comments from our studio audience. We just had an hour to talk about civic engagement in Arlington, and probably, if you're like me, you've discovered that we've talked about many more unanswered questions than we have actually resolved anything, but that's really the nature of civic engagement. It's a process. It's not something that you do on Thursday and it's done by Monday. It's something that becomes a part of your life. And we've got three people who represent very unique constituencies and areas of the county, but who all have the common thread of doing what they can to ensure that they pay homage to Arlington's past and Arlington's traditions, while also trying to figure out how we navigate the future of civic engagement, keeping residents and stakeholders of all different backgrounds connected, taking advantage and trying to figure out how new ways of communicating play a role in our being connected. It's truly fascinating stuff being a part of this Arlington community, and I'm so thankful for James Schroll and Cecilia Espinoza, Dr. Alfred Taylor for joining us tonight on VoiceBox, and thank you very much to our studio audience. I'm Christian Dorsey, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you will join us for future VoiceBoxes, where we'll discuss issues that affect you here in the Arlington community and give you a chance to understand how you can play a better role in our community's forward progress. Thanks a lot, and I hope you all have a great night.